Hi, and welcome to our Friday Fireside Chats. Thank you so much for being here and always supporting the Game Changer community. We were a little bit late. We were just dealing with some technical difficulties, but it is in the middle of winter and cold, and who knows what's going on outside with internet connection. So no big deal. Here we are, and we're excited to be here to meet you tonight and talk a little bit about OCD advocacy. First, before we get into talking about the subject for tonight, I just wanted to say my name is Christy Hodges. I'm the executive director of OCD Game Changers. I'm also an OCD advocate, author of Pure OCD. I co-founded OCD Peers over here. There we go. Where we run groups, and I do peer support consultations around the world and referral consultations to help connect people to therapists. OCD Game Changers is a nonprofit. We're committed to creating community, creating awareness, being able to bring people together and create solutions to some of our biggest obstacles in the OCD community. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is our campaign that we are doing all month in partnership with Tawana Watson on Black History Awareness Month. We decided that this month what we would do is we're looking at Black history, and we want to be really honest about the Black history and mental health. There's not that much positive to talk about. And so what we wanted to do is really talk about the barriers that people experience in the Black community when it comes to mental health. I personally, thanks so much to my friend Tawana, who's helped open my eyes to a lot of what her community has gone through. I've done a lot of research in the last couple of days, and I will tell you, as much as I felt like I was educated, it has been mind-blowing, astounding. I have felt nauseous at all of the information I did not know about the history of the Black community and mental health. I really would encourage you to pay attention to the campaign that our spokesperson on the campaign, Tawana, has put together at some of the barriers we are going to expose. And you probably will learn a few things about why mental health has not been something that has been readily available, something that the Black community wants to pursue, and something that they deserve. Intermittently in there, we're also going to talk about some people in the Black community that have been heroes in the mental health community. But again, you might not know about them. I didn't know about them. And so we're going to highlight those people and the barriers that they have broken down. It's been hard enough for me, and it's February 5th. We've got a long way to go, and we've got a lot to learn. I hope you'll get on board and hear what we're trying to say. Please don't jump to conclusions before you understand what the campaign is about. And I am excited to hear your feedback during and once it's over. I want to let our guest introduce himself. I'm really excited to have him on board tonight. And we're going to talk about advocacy and what it's like to become an advocate, because he has firsthand knowledge of literally in the time frame of like the last year, if not even a few months. So yeah. Kyle, please introduce yourself to our community.
Well, it's awesome to be here, and I can't thank Christy enough for asking me to be on this. Oh, hang on, my puppy is making noise right now, so 1 second.
He's like, I want to be part.
He wants to be part of this. 1 second, let me grab her. So hopefully that keeps her busy. So, but of course. But yes, I am Kyle Glickman. I guess one of the major things is me not letting OCD define myself, and me being like, I'm Kyle Glickman and I have OCD and this is what I suffer with. But more what I like to tell is I'm Kyle Glickman. I'm 31 years old. I own a gym with my wife. I love what I do for a living. And I struggle with OCD. It's part of me, but it doesn't define me.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is very important. It's opening up about OCD is probably almost just as terrifying as going through OCD itself.
Yes.
So, I would say it started with me when I was a child. I was always super anxious. and not understanding what that was at the time. But like having terrible separation anxiety when I was a kid, playing sports. I grew up playing sports all the time, but I was always unbelievably anxious, going through playing while I was playing sports. And that definitely held me back. But when I first looking back, where my OCD probably like really started was when I was a kid, I used to have very, very intrusive thoughts of people coming in and harming my family. So
Mm-hmm.
very visual thoughts of this, which led to me locking doors and locking windows like crazy. So I would lock all the doors. Every night I would check every window. And this is when I'm like 10, 11 years old.
I
me,
get it.
me thinking that's like, that's to my mind. I'm like, well, this is normal. Like, this is what this is how everybody is. And
Mm-hmm.
so my dad coming home in the middle of the day and he'd be like, why are all the doors locked? And me telling him like, I'm afraid that people are going to come in and kill everybody. And him being like,
Mm-hmm.
of course, writing it off, being like, no, don't lock the doors in the middle of the day.
Right.
Which totally just reinforced me locking the doors even more. But as I kind of grew up, I kind of grew out of that a little bit. That's those obsessions kind of started to fade as I got a little bit older, and I think maybe a little more reasonable as I grew older. And then I would say was pretty much I definitely dealt with anxiety through all of high school, all of college, but not until a year ago. It was January 29th to 2020 was when I was diagnosed with OCD.
Wow.
And I was extremely triggered by a TV show with sexually intrusive thoughts. I remember I was at home. My wife is a full-time fireman, so she works long hours, long days. So a lot of times I'd be home alone. And I remember I was just like very stressed. COVID was just starting. We own
Right.
a gym, and we were very nervous about COVID happening and what was this going to do to our gym, and so much where the stress was just piling on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at home watching a documentary, and it was, if anybody's seen the Aaron Hernandez documentary,
Mm-hmm.
or the football player who's this big manly football player,
Yes. This
and
triggered so many people, Kyle.
he was killing people. He was in jail or in prison, and then there was rumors of him being gay, and there was all these things, and I was like, oh my, I started just drawing connections. I was like, I played football my entire life. My dad was
Mm-hmm.
loved my dad to death, but extremely hard on me. um,
Yeah.
and kind of built this, and kind of the same sort of thing of his dad building the what is a man supposed to look like in his head.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, it just literally, I remember sitting there, and it was like somebody took my brain and replaced it with somebody else's brain. And it was like, whoa, what if I'm gay?
Yes.
And I was like, initially, I was like, dude, nah. I love my
Mm-hmm.
wife. I've been with girls my entire life. It's never been a thought in my entire life. But if he could be, then I.
Yes.
And then it was off to the races.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Absolutely.
everything I could possibly imagine to gain certainty on my sexuality.
Yep. Yep.
It was we're like, if there was one thing that I was really good at, I can do the checking compulsion better than anybody. I can mentally check over and over better than anybody. And that was so hard to get to break.
Yeah.
And kind of going through it, I remember being at our gym and being terrified, and it just kept getting like the compulsion, like the obsessions kept getting worse. It just, every person you're looking at, are you judging some, like, are you attracted to that person? Are you attracted to this person? Are you attracted to this person? Constantly in
Yep.
that cycle, ruminating through memories, trying to prove yourself one way or the other way. And
Yes.
even remember if one memory's right, if one memory even happened, or if you're just making it up in your head.
Right.
So, and then, it started to progressed from more so just the sexual orientation into very sexually intrusive thoughts, where it was no matter what you're looking at was sex, 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 sex. Could be anything. Anything and
Yeah.
everything was triggering me to think about sex. And again, that was like extremely difficult to me because it was something where I love my wife so much that it was like, how am I thinking about this when I love her? And it was just to crush, like just kept crushing me, let alone questioning my sexuality. It was okay. Now I'm thinking about sex with anything and everything, and it just won't stop. Then as all this was happening, obviously it's building and building and building, and you're just doing compulsions to make it go away. Without at that time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that the compulsion was making me feel a little bit better, and then it would go away, but then it would come back worse, and I would do it again. And throughout that time, my sleep was just tanking. I was not sleeping at all. I wasn't eating. I had started losing a ton of weight because I started getting very depressed about it because it was taking over everything to the point where I was trying to be at the gym and train people, and I couldn't because it was the only thing I could think about, and I felt like I was putting myself and people in an unsafe position with them working out and me not being able to focus on that. And then where it started to get really bad was at the end point of that, where everything started to turn into sexually harmful, intrusive thoughts. So, like in terms of rape and those sort of things, how do I know that I'm not going to rape somebody or hurt somebody? It was just so immense and so intense that at that point, I stopped sleeping because I was afraid that I was going to go to sleep and I would get up in the middle of the night and hurt somebody.
Oh no.
Or assault somebody.
Yeah.
And at this point, me trying to keep a grip on it all, trying to force myself to get into the gym, it was so brutal. And my wife, like, she started picking up on, she was like, something's wrong. Like, she knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking her in the eyes and being like, this is it was probably the most difficult thing that I've ever done, was telling her that this was what I was suffering with. And this is what's going on in my head at a mile a minute pace.
Right.
And then at that point, I was like, you know what? I need to figure out what this is, like figure out what is going on. Started Googling things and found, at the time it was intrusive-thoughts.org.
There you are. Are you back?
And I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening in my head right now. Like, this is, yes. Good.
Okay, are we good? It got a little bit lost for a minute, but I think you're back. Can you hear me okay?
Is it good? Cool.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right. And then so I found intrusive. Yes.
Yep. Intrusive-thoughts.org.
Back? Okay. Yeah. Started reading and I was like, holy crap, this is really what's going on in my head. And but at first I was like, there's no way. Like, I don't have OCD.
Right.
Like, I don't have OCD. And, but I was like, you know what? Like, this is really it seems like this is what I'm suffering with. Let me do some research and find someone in the area who helps with this. And that's where I found Genesee Valley Psychology, which was ran by Dr. Lauren, who is amazing. Dr. Lauren Wadsworth. She is amazing.
Good.
And I remember I emailed her and I was like, I need to meet with somebody now. And I got unbelievably lucky because that next day I got to meet my therapist, Lynn, who is, man, if I could say that there's support is like one of the most important things through your recovery process of it. Like, she is awesome. She pushes me all the time.
Good.
But I met with her and she was like, yep, I'm going to reassure you one time, this is what you're struggling with. um, and we're going to and then she was like, our game plan is to get you through the weekend so I can meet with you on Monday. And it was
Wow.
before the Super Bowl. It was right before the Super Bowl. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go be with my family and watch this. I can't go.
Right.
I can't.
Right.
And she was like, the first thing we did was we established values. That was the one thing that we did that first session. She was like, let's work on your values, and we're going to start making decisions based off of those and not OCD.
That's so
She
awesome.
was like, you are going to go and sit as long as you can because you value being with your family,
Hmm.
and you will go and you will at least go.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I can do that. And it was it was brutal because it's just
I bet.
you're when you're in the midst of it, like, again, talking about the thoughts itself, but like when you're struggling with sexually intrusive thoughts and you're around your family, it is just unbelievably debilitating.
I know.
um, and I made it through that, and then on Monday we went in and we went right into ERP, and we started with it's awesome because ERP is I draw so many similarities to training on how you build your hierarchy.
Hmm.
And that's just like training when you're weight training, and we build different programs, and they build off one another.
Oh.
And it made so much sense to me. I was
Hmm.
terrified, absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
It was like her telling me that I had to write a script about this. I was like, I can't. Like
Yeah.
couldn't even write the words.
Right.
um, so working through that, started getting better, but the checking compulsion was just taking over. It was still just taking over,
Hmm.
to the point to where I remember feeling this immense out of body feeling. And it was, of course, I go to Google again, and it's like, oh, you're suffering from depersonalization. So now I'm like, what is going on with me? Like, I'm in this world of like, I just figured out that I have OCD, but now I'm struggling with this too. And it was just layered on top of one another. And then at that point, depersonalization started to take over because I was so far gone
Right.
anxiety wise that
Right.
everything would just felt like a different world, a dream. Nothing felt real,
Hmm.
which that scared me more than anything,
Yeah.
because I thought that I was stuck like that forever. And so, of course, the checking compulsion was, am I here? Am I really here? Is this real? Am I Kyle? Just constantly in your head trying to find things to do. And I used to do this thing where I used to pinch my nose to tell me that, oh, I'm feeling that I'm here right now.
Hmm. Wow.
And it's like you look back at it and you're like, man, I can't believe that was the thing that comforted me so much
Hmm.
back then. Because you look at it, you're like, what? But at the time, it was like that was the thing that got me through.
Survival.
That was what got me through the day.
It was survival.
And it reached a point to where so I was really, really struggling at that point. Going to therapy, but I would go into therapy with Lynn, and she would look at me and she'd be like, we can't do this right now because you're so gone. You're so tired. You just like, when you need to take a break. So I remember we sat down and she was like, we're just going to do a meditation together today. I fell asleep in like 3 minutes in her office.
Wow.
it was I woke up in a chair outside of her office. It was, and I was so far gone, and I remember I got home and I just was like, Ava, like my wife Ava, I was like, I really, like, I don't know what is happening to me right now. I need to go to the hospital. And
Wow.
so I was checked into the hospital for a week, because I was convinced that there was something else wrong with me.
Yep.
Um, and that was such an experience of being in the hospital for that week, and being around some people that taught me so much, like, just taught me so much. My roommate was a homeless guy who was struggling with schizophrenia, and man, like, that experience was life changing for me.
Yes.
And then I eventually, after a week, I started like, they put me on medication to help me fall asleep. That was the major thing. They were like, you need to go to sleep. But I remember
Wow.
I was like, no, I can't, because I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and hurt somebody.
Right, right.
And they definitely reassured me there, where they were like, you trust me, you're not hurting anybody in here.
We will take you down
Yes.
before you hurt someone.
um, and I eventually started feeling a little bit better and getting to it. And I remember being in the hospital, and a one of the other guys in there wanted to watch The Matrix. And I started watching The Matrix. And if you're struggling with depersonalization and like
I
existential
was
thoughts,
like,
that is
oh my God.
literally the worst thing that could ever happen.
I know, for a minute I'm like the Matrix, and I'm like, no, Kyle, don't do it.
I remember I ran back to my room so fast and just closed the door and laid in my bed under the pillow. But eventually everything got better. I started to feel a little bit better, and they're like, okay, they're like, your progress is going to be made being outside of here, and taking on your anxiety head on. And you understand ERP, you understand OCD, you understand what you have to do to get better. And but in my mind, it was like, well, that's not what I care about. I care about figuring out, is this all real? Am I gay or not? Am I a sexual addict? Am I going to hurt somebody? Like, so in my mind was like, oh yeah, OCD, whatever. But what I care about is finding certainty about all these different things going on in my head at one time.
Of course. Right. Of course.
Yeah. So eventually, got out and went, we started therapy right away again. And, I changed my entire schedule at the gym. I stopped training people at first so I could focus on that, and getting to a place where I felt comfortable with it. And then it was, okay, let's start just building because essentially what I had to do was I just needed to recover from what my body had just gone through. Because I wasn't sleeping for almost a month
What?
straight. It was like a few hours here and there. It was terrible. So it was, okay, I literally had the energy to do ERP, and then I would have to go like lay down. So
Right. Oh,
it was a
I'm
long,
so
like that
glad you
first
brought
month out
that
of
up.
that first month out of the hospital was really, really hard. But I
Hmm.
was like, no, I'm going to do what my therapist Lynn says to do. Like, I loved having control. I'm going to give it up and give it to her, and we're gonna come up with a plan. And it was like, after a month in, we're going to start, um, slowly going towards the anxiety. Okay, you're unbelievably nervous to train somebody right now. We're gonna train one person.
Right. Hmm.
And it was literally one person that first week.
Hmm.
And this is something I've been doing since I was 16.
Yeah.
So it was like, I was training 40 sessions a week to training one person.
Right. Yeah.
And owning a gym and having to be in the gym where other trainers are looking to me for help.
Hmm.
Um, and going through it all, there was definitely some things that really, really helped me get to the. So reading the book, overcoming. I think it was called "Overcoming Unwanted Intrusive Thoughts."
Hmm. Yep.
Reading that and really grasping like what OCD is and how it works in the brain, and
Hmm.
um, you know how my brain is wired differently than other people.
Hmm.
So, and then really getting into. Let me see. I wrote some stuff down. So again, the support was really huge for me to get to, and then just having awesome, awesome friends. Like that was
Yeah.
like just being able to people if they want to be my friends, they're gonna want to help me through this.
Right.
And they were all so supportive. So that was major. And then because I was so we went to this point where we were watching a video as an exposure, and she was like, pause it. She's like, what are you thinking about right now? And I was like, am I having a groinal or not? And she was like, we don't do that. We don't do that here right now. She's like, we don't do that. She's like, that's not how this works. And I was like, and then I was like, okay. And we came to this thing where it was like, I'm just going to do the exposure. I'm going to watch the video as just a human being who's watching the video. Whether you have OCD or not, you're just going to sit here and watch the video.
Right.
And it just clicked to me where I was like, the entire time I've been doing this, I've been doing compulsions. The entire time I've been doing exposures.
Yes, of course.
And then it clicked, and I was like, oh my God. And then I just started really like, I was like, you know what? Like I can pushing myself, like going out and looking for an exposure and being like, you know what? I'm going to go into this coffee shop and sit here and just be in here because I genuinely want to be in here. I want to be in this coffee shop sitting. And when you're in a public place, when you're struggling with this, you're looking at every single person passing you, and your brain wants to look and check and check and check. And you know, a major compulsion that I had was if I looked at a guy, I would have to look at a girl right after.
Yep.
And it was
right.
Ooh, but I looked at that guy for longer, so now I need to look at two girls to balance it out.
Right.
And it's crazy, again, understanding that that's what made my brain feel safe.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to comprehend,
Yeah.
but that's just the way it is. When it comes to compulsions, there's no rhyme or reason. You do what you do to just balance it out.
Yeah. So, you know, and then I guess another thing that was major for me was really establishing a mindfulness practice and meditation. That has been when I first started meditating. I started meditating before I was diagnosed with OCD. And then it was extremely difficult to meditate when everything was going on. And now I'm at a point
bring it back to notice your thoughts, and you're like, all my thoughts are horrible.
And then what would happen, I would be like, it would just trigger existentialism and depersonalization because I would be focusing on my breathing. So it was, again, your brain.
Am I really breathing?
Exactly.
Is this really true? Am I alive? Am I not alive? Am I in the Matrix?
Yes. And it goes to right when your brain is like, oh, I got this figured out, but we don't have this figured out. And so it was, you know, now I got to a point to where I do an exposure and I meditate after. And it's because not to bring down the anxiety, but because I want to sit with it more and I welcome it. And it's like, okay, if this makes me anxious, I'm going to sit with it longer versus doing an exposure and trying to go distract myself.
Wow.
So, and you know, that it just took so much work. And I guess the one thing that I would say is probably the best advice was just keep showing up. Like, just keep showing up, because if you show up, you will figure it out. Like, I was showing up and I was doing exposure ERP totally wrong. I was doing it totally wrong. But eventually my brain, I figured it out. And if I were to give up on it, I would still be struggling.
Right.
You know, and I'm not going to say that there's times where I don't struggle still. You know, thoughts, they don't go away.
Right.
But the best quote that I ever heard about for OCD with me specifically was, I think it was Dr. Phillipson. I think that's his name. And
that would be my therapist.
Yeah. Awesome. So when he spoke about, it was on the OCD Stories podcast. And when he spoke about the family that moved into the house with the train flying by, and all you hear is the train, and then they have people over and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you deal with that noise. And they say, what noise?
I
And
know. I
was
know.
that was like the moment where I was like, you're right. Like I can totally live my life with this here. I don't need
Exactly.
I don't need to know the answer to this. I don't. I'm
Mhm.
going to live my life based off
Right.
my values. I love my wife. I'm going to live my life loving my wife.
Right. Right.
And again, I'm not going to say it's not difficult at times, because when you're triggered, it's difficult. Uh,
Yeah.
and you can be so far along in recovery, and all it takes is like one little thing to be like, ah, and just one little thing to push you that little bit. And I feel like you just have to fall back on, like, I have the skill set to
Mhm.
handle this.
Mhm. Yeah. A funny story is that we just moved into this house about a little under a year ago, and I love this house so much. We live right by a train track. And I'm going to tell you, for the first 2 weeks of living here, I my brain kept wanting to latch on to, you're not going to be able to live here. You're not going to be okay with this because the train's going to drive you nuts. But then when the train would go through, I loved it. Every once in a while it squeaks and it's
Yeah,
annoying,
but
but
it's
I
so
love the sound. But my brain, this was the one time I was just like, yeah, right, OCD, like you're screwed, because it really, I got into this battle with my brain because my brain was like, you're not going to be able to handle this. You're going to go crazy. You're not going to be able to sleep. But I would go, but I like the train. And so I kind of obsessed about whether I was going to obsess about it.
yep.
But I love Phillipson's analogy. It's in the article choice. And eventually, um, I don't even notice the train anymore. Even in the middle of the night, sometimes I'll wake up and I'll hear the train and I don't even, um,
This is there.
yeah, exactly. So I do have some kind of follow up stuff that I wanted to say based on your story. First of all, you owning a gym and having sexual orientation OCD, holy hell. Like this is
Yeah.
Kyle, this is one of the biggest things that male, female, however you identify, people, gyms are the biggest trigger spot for people with sexual orientation
Yeah.
OCD, because you're in there, like people are wearing, barely anything
People are half
sometimes.
naked. They're sweating. There's people bending over.
They're making sex noises.
There's
They're
locker rooms. There's
grunting.
showers. Yes, it is. It was. I'm telling you, there was times it was unbearable at times. It really was. Like, again, like I had to stop totally because I was just too overwhelmed. But yes, that but I tell you what, again, a great way for me. I feel like that's part of the reason why I was able to get to where I am, is that for me
Yes.
to live my life based off my values, which one of them is service, and especially being in the gym and working
Yeah.
with people. Um, I am not going to let OCD take that away from me, no matter how difficult that it is. And again, it
Right.
started with me going in the gym for an hour, getting back in the
Right.
gym for 1 hour, and then just
Mhm.
slowly building myself back up. And then it's
Mhm.
I'm in there more than ever now.
Right. And this is so common for people when they work in professions where their intrusive thoughts just really latch onto. So people who may have POCD, which is the intrusive thoughts about pedophilia, they're teachers. They're working in the industry where they have to work with kids, or they have kids, and for harm intrusive thoughts, or and they're police officers, or they're dealing with where they're constantly in the face of crime and things like that. It's
Yes.
I love, not that I don't love it, but I love that you're able to talk about this, because I don't love that it happened to you, but I love that you're bringing light to it, because so many people struggle with going to the gym, and that's when they have sexual orientation OCD. And doing peer support with people, that is literally what I say. Just go back in one time per week.
Hmm.
If you were in there 3 times a week before and now you can't go in at all, go once. Go
Exactly.
and just hang out at the parking lot for a little while.
The way I think about it, it's just like the hierarchy of your ERP exposures, where it's all about just building yourself up. It's just like, you can't expect someone to come in and bench press that can't do a push up. Like, You know what I mean? It's like
Exactly.
I have to build you up. And it just, I found so much connection between the gym and OCD that I was able to build. I was like, man, I get this now. And
Yeah.
I know how to take the steps to not beat this, but to learn to live with it.
Well, that was another thing I wrote down actually as I'm an athlete, and I understand the process of training for something. And ERP is almost the same thing when you were talking about that of like building a hierarchy. You don't go in and bench press 180 if you
Yeah.
haven't bench pressed in
The ball.
like a year.
Yes. That's the truth.
Like for me, I would start with 50.
Yeah.
And
No, that's what I
you
said. I was like,
build and stretch and you break that muscle down and it builds and you have to look at it as a process. And I think that for people with OCD, we get so black and white about I just want to feel better and this should be able to work when
yeah,
it is so behavior. You know, you do not, and my best analogy is the basketball. Like if you want to learn to dribble a basketball, you do not just go out and start dribbling the ball and think that you can look away and still dribble. You
yeah,
practice for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks until finally you go out there and you're playing ball and you realize you're dribbling and not thinking about it.
that is perfect.
That's the mind body connection right there. And that's what we have to do with ERP. So your analogy is, I just so much appreciate it.
Yeah. Again, it was one thing. It was a thing that really helped me a lot. And I think that being able to find some way to relate OCD to like in the OCD therapy of ERP to something that you can relate to, just
Yes.
really helps you grasp like what we're trying to do here. Because I was the same when I first started. I was like, I'm gonna do all the exposures because if I do the exposure, I'm gonna get better.
In one day. Uh-oh, I think you froze. Are you there? Okay. Are you back?
And yeah, good.
Are we
Oh
good
no,
now?
I think so.
No, you're good. I can hear you now. Yeah. You
Okay,
were saying you
so
were going to do all the exposures.
yes, so I was like, I'm just doing everything. I was like, I'm gonna watch all these videos that are gonna trigger me, and I'm gonna go out of my way, and I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna go into the anxiety, and I'm like, I can do this, and it was just like a downfall, like, and it just, I was not there yet at all, and then now I look at where I am now, and I literally remember I was sitting with Lynn, and I'm like, my therapist, and I'm like, I can't believe the things that I'm doing now. Like a year ago, there is no way I would have been
Right.
able to do this stuff. And that's as difficult and as brutal as OCD is. Um, I really look back at it and I'm like, man, this was such a huge opportunity for me to grow as a person, and break so many stigmas that I had built in my head that were just engraved in my head from a child, and really learn to like be the person that I want to be. And that's as difficult as OCD is, and it was for me.
Yeah.
Able to look back and say that I would not change it because I love who I am now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's I just hope that that can give hope to somebody. If one person is watching this that's struggling, that they can understand that I have been in the grips of it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
being like just beat down by it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't change my experience. It sucked, but I wouldn't change it because I love who I am now.
So one of the things I have a couple more questions until we wrap up. Um, you know what? One of the ways I think we met was on Instagram. It
Yeah,
was kind of like you had tagged me in a video, and I'm like, "What? Wait, what is this?" And I look, and it was like you went from doing what you do, and this, and this, and all of a sudden your world was boom, OCD advocacy. This is
yeah,
what I'm doing. This is where I'm going to make everything about this. And I remember just seeing this and going, you don't see this every day. And which is what I wanted to do for years and years and years. And I was too scared to until like around 2013 or 2014. But I just was so impressed with just the key got turned so quickly, and just the how brave it was for you to be like, you know what, I'm going to toss everything up in the air, and boom, we're doing OCD advocacy now. And so that's why I've just been so impressed with what you're doing, and it's so amazing. And but my question is not necessarily a question, but just if you could expand more. What I really appreciate here is your transparency about the theme. And I think for men, there are a lot of advocates out there, and they do not, that they will talk about OCD, but they don't go into the details about some of the really heavier intrusive thoughts that may
Yeah.
perceive them as, if you're dealing with sexual orientation OCD, if you're dealing with, even relationship OCD, where it might make you
Yep.
look like you're unfaithful, or you have, and then of course we get into the more taboo of harm and POCD and things like that. Talk a little bit about, you know, what was it that just made you go, I don't really care. Like,
Yeah.
like, no, regardless of how this comes across, this is important, and I'm going to talk about it openly.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was looking back through my life and realizing that so much of my life I cared so much about what people thought about me, to the point where like that was what was driving me is so hard, was because I just cared about what so many people, what their perception of what Kyle was. And I was never making decisions really based off of what I truly wanted to do and what I wanted to be. And I took a step back and I just was like, man, if there's somebody out there that is specifically a male who is unbelievably afraid of this right now, that doesn't understand what's going on and is just trying to run from it, if I can be if I can just help one person,
Mm-hmm.
that it all worth it. And I don't care if I have close people that are like that don't get it, because I can promise you, not many people get it. And I'm okay with it. I'm like, whatever. Like I got to a point to where like you're trying to explain to everyone what OCD is. It's exhausting because it just never. It's just yeah, but you're fighting the good fight, and it's like I get it, but it's like, you know what? Like if you're not,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to go out and truly, because that's a major thing to me is like before you speak your opinion on something, like go out and educate yourself on the topic, because there's people that truly are suffering from this, and for some,
Mm-hmm.
it just made me realize how many people don't understand what OCD really is, and then especially what the taboo topics can bring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
um, I reached this point where I was like, you know what? Like there's definitely someone out there in my shoes that is really struggling with this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hopefully one day something that I post or someone that I help will be able to it'll be able to reach them. And
Mm-hmm.
making that decision of, and having to talk it over with my wife and everything like that. I mean, like this is an important decision because if I'm going to share my story, she comes linked with that. um,
Right.
Having the support from her being like, you have the ability to help so many people, you need to do this.
I love that.
um and it that where that at that point I was just like, this is what I'm doing. um
Good.
and in terms of kind of where my advocacy is going, it's kind of up in the air. It's just kind of whatever I have thoughts on my head is what I want to talk about, and not
Mm-hmm.
like structure to it. It's like, hey, this is what's on my mind right now, this is what I'm going to put out there. um
Mm-hmm.
and I just, again, it was just this moment of, man, there's so many people that don't understand OCD at all, let alone something like sexually intrusive thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That
Well, I'm so appreciative of it, and I've been advocating for a long time for this, for these very just different intrusive thoughts that you don't normally think for OCD. And anytime I see someone coming forward, being forthcoming, and especially males, and
yeah.
not that I'm not appreciative of females at all of coming forward, but it's just the dominated advocacy field for it is female. And so having males, because the male support is so needed. There's just so many stereotypes around the sexual intrusive thoughts that males feel really intimidated and scared to be able to ask for help. So thank you for what you do, and that's why you're here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows who you are, and that we can elevate what you're doing, and they can support you. So where can people find you to to find what the advocacy that you're doing?
Yeah, so I would say probably the best place would probably be through Instagram,
Mhm.
where my handle is just my first and last name at Kyle Glickman. Um, that would definitely be the best place. Also on Facebook, I don't check Facebook as often as Instagram, but
Mhm.
definitely there. You can
Okay.
also I also have a website. It's kyleglickman.com.
Okay.
Um, we'll slowly transition into a combination of my fitness stuff along with mental health stuff. That's
Mhm.
kind of a major goal of mine is to be able to bridge the gap and bring it together. Uh,
Awesome.
which is starting in the fall. I will be going to school for my second master's in clinical mental health counseling. Um,
Excellent.
because I have such a passion bridging the gap between that. Um,
Awesome.
and obviously having a huge passion to help for OCD. um,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I truly feel like when somebody is suffering with OCD and they have that breakthrough moment that they just realize that like I've seen it in the groups that I go to and like I see people like just have these moments and I'm just like, oh, like I'm so
Yeah.
happy for that person because I've been there.
Yeah.
And start really living your life based off those values again.
Yeah.
Like that feeling of watching, because I know I felt it, and watching someone else come in and you can see their demeanor change week to week, and it's just like, wow.
I know. It's magical, isn't it? It's
it's,
magical.
it's so
Well,
true.
so one of the things, just to wrap up, want to get your final thoughts, but also just more pointedly, you are someone that literally in the course of 12 months, your entire life has changed, but
Yes.
then it changed again by being able to receive adequate help and then making a decision. I'm going to speak out. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm dedicating my life to it. There are a lot of people out there right now that are feeling the same way and they're wanting to do something and they're scared, which of course it's always scary to come out with your
Yeah.
story. So is there anything that you can leave our listeners with that can help to just give them that extra support or push or just love
Yeah.
of it's okay, put your story out there?
I think it's kind of a way where when I first started training clients as a personal trainer, I was 18 years old. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Social anxiety my entire life. But you know what? I got this advice from my first boss in the gym. He told me, Kyle, you need to start before you're ready. Start before you're ready because you're gonna
Yes.
learn. You're gonna learn along the way. And you know what else
Yep.
you're gonna learn if you don't want to do this. Um,
Yes. I'm writing
and
this down.
yeah, he start and and I teach trainers come to me when they're starting and they're so nervous. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, well, we don't know if you can do this. Start before you're just start before you're ready.
Right.
With some little plan, just start executing the plan. Um,
Yep.
you'll learn really quickly if you want to do it or not.
Right.
And I think to create some reassurance, it's from when I started, when I started, the amount of outreach that I got back from people being like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you struggle with this, and you do everything that you do, and you're trying, you're pushing, you're putting this out there." Um, and other people being like, "Man, you have already helped me so much."
Yes. Yes.
You can't replace that feeling. So that's where I definitely would suggest, hey, start before you're ready.
And you know what else I would add to that is you're never going to be ready.
Yeah, never. You can never, never.
And so just start, and then you'll find out that you've usually already surpassed being ready.
Yeah,
All it really takes is taking the risk and living with the uncertainty like we do every day with OCD.
yeah. And that's why I definitely wore a Windsor shirt that says I'm okay with not knowing the answer.
Yes. Awesome. Windsor Flynn.
Yeah.
That's her line. Well, thank you, Kyle. And I just want to reinforce, to those of you, this is what Game Changers, this is what we do. What are your ideas? What are your projects? What's your blog? What's your video? What are you doing? Send it to us. Let us help elevate what you're doing because the first step is the hardest. The first step is terrifying because what are people going to think? And what if nobody reads and what if nobody this? But you know what? You don't have to do it alone. You can do it with support. So let us help you, help hold your hand. even though you may not be ready. So
Yeah.
Kyle, thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure. I am very eager and excited to see where your advocacy is going to go and how we can partner, with Game Changers to help elevate whatever message you have, and then you to be part of our family. So really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. And I definitely, again, I just would love to, one, thank you obviously so much for being here. There's definitely people that have helped me so much along the way. Again, like support is just number one. And like my wife has been amazing. If it wasn't for Lynn, like Lynn has been awesome. I definitely know all the people from my group are watching this. So I want,
Awesome. Yay.
um, my friend Julia, she has been amazing through all of this. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, and I think just building that support group was something that was huge for me.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And just, we're here for you and wherever you go in your advocacy, and just really appreciate you doing what you do for our community.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you so much.
and thank you all for being here today on our Fireside Fridays. As you probably noticed, we're doing a few fewer, but we're still doing our Monday Mavericks. We're just not doing them every week, and that's okay. From the standpoint of Chrissy, who's gotten really, really busy. But we're still coming at you live with Firesides and Monday Mavericks. Again, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. Please consider donating to us. All profits go towards all of our initiatives and everything that we can do to provide awareness and create community. Coming up in the next month or so, we will be announcing our next event, which will happen in May. We're super excited about it. And we also have an addiction panel coming up for the next few months to support our community that suffers with OCD and addiction. We're really, really excited about being able to show up for you, give you a safe space to be able to talk about what you're dealing with, especially in this time of the pandemic. Also, head on over to OCD Game Changers on Instagram or Facebook. Find out what we're doing for Black History Month. It is really powerful. It's really been life-changing for me, and I hope it will be for you too. I will see you next time on Monday Mavericks, which will be either next week or the week after, because I haven't looked at the calendar. But thank you for being here, and as always, for supporting our community here at OCD Game Changers. Bye.